To all the people out there who work as a scarer in haunted houses, what was your best scare reaction? Part 2. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Not a scarer, but I have a feeling I, and by proxy the group I was with, was this person's best scare. Our group was in a dark maze filled with chainsaw maniacs all dressed in black. After a couple of scares, all the chainsaws went quiet, setting a very uneasy calm. I had been sent to the back of the group because I wasn't fazed by the haunted house section. As we came up on the end of the maze, I heard footsteps behind me. Thinking this was another group, I said, "Hey, we think the exit is this way." Turns out I was wrong, not about the exit, but the fact that it was another group. It was one of the chainsaw maniacs, and they responded by revving the chainsaw, cue our entire group, and a cording up on the door out the maze because the sickos who designed it built it so the door opens in, not out. Had a dude once come through, jumped a bloody mile in the air when I scared him. He just stopped with this far-off look and said, "I just shit myself." I stayed in character till the smell hit me. I broke and asked if he wanted an escort. Dude seemed to snap out of it and said, "Nah." I pinched the rest back, and off he marched. Not a haunted house, but a zombie run. I was the last zombie before you could escape. I'm 4'11". I look pretty weak and I wear glasses, which I had fixed with tape as part of my costume. I was supposed to have been a medic before I became a zombie. Despite how I look, I have a very loud voice. I'm good at screaming and I'm a good runner. My job was to mill about near the end of the course and catch and tag as infected anyone I felt like. I used to approach or look distracted as people crept towards me. Not all zombies attacked, so people weren't sure how to deal with me. Plus, there were some who had acquired zombie repellent and were quite confident. Spoiler, zombie repellent doesn't work. I'd wait until they had just passed me before unleashing an unholy scream and sprinting after them. I caught a few, but the best reactions were a fully grown man who cried actual tears and asked for his mum, and a girl who pissed herself, then threw her water bottle at me. It was a lot of fun, and all the screaming was quite a good core workout. My abs were agony for days after. I did a bit of time as a scarer when I was 15, and a decade later, it's still my favorite job I've had despite it being a fully costumed, 6+ hours in near darkness with no break. A good 20% of the time, I had punters fully convinced I was animatronic, and the moment where you moved suddenly, times just with them shit-talking was absolutely the best. In particular, I remember a guy who was poking stuff and laughing whilst his girlfriend was kinda scared in general, trying to poke through a cage I was in at me. Reacted like a robot for long enough that he got bored, and just as he went to go, I grabbed his finger, started waving a knife around like mad, and pressed a foot pedal for some sounds. 6-foot+ guy ran out back towards the entrance screaming, and my manager came back in to have a laugh. We actually shut down for 20 minutes or so because the guy's raving in the lobby caused so much fuss. Some thought he was a paid actor. Kids started crying and the line doubled up. This wasn't my best scare, but it was the funniest scare. I work as a clown street performer at a well-known amusement park. Part of my costume was a clown jacket, but I didn't have a shirt underneath it, so I had bloody makeup all over my bare chest. One evening, I walked up to a couple who was minding their own business. I was holding my jacket closed so that they couldn't see my chest. I asked them what their favorite superhero was. I think they both agreed on Batman. At that moment, I screamed, "Mine's the Flash!" as I pulled open my jacket and exposed my bloody chest makeup right up in their faces. It's incredibly difficult trying to scare someone if you're already in plain sight, but I managed to pull it off this time. It also gave them a good laugh. I got kicked in the nuts real hard by a kid. I was a chainsaw-wielding clown on a haunted hayride. We would hide until the wagon went past us, and then run and jump onto the wagon with running saws. One kid didn't like it at all, and hoofed me right in the clown balls. I kept a bit more distance after that. I volunteered one season to help my friend with their new haunted house. My teens knew I worked there, but the crew was sworn to secrecy about our roles. I had the role of creepy stalker. I looked and stood like the Grim Reaper mannequin. I saw my daughter and half her hockey team go by me. I silently stalked after the last one. When noticed, the girls went screaming and running away into a corner and piled up together in a heap on the floor. Then, One looked up at me and said, "Kristen, I think that's your mom." The screaming stopped. They all looked up and quietly got up and walked away like it never even happened. Not a scare, but one of my earliest memories involves riding on my dad's shoulders and getting hit in the eye by a haunted house mummy with a fingertip squirt gun. He felt so bad, he leapt out of his sarcophagus and broke character to apologize and make sure I was all right. That's when I learned that the undead could be pretty all right sometimes. My friend was in Boy Scouts, and every year they put on a haunted trail through the woods, baseball field. One year he invites me to join him even though I'm not in Boy Scouts, so I go. Sure, why not? His mom is a great artist, so I go over there with my cheap little werewolf kit, and she does the whole thing for me. I looked terrifyingly realistic. The wild hair, fangs, giant ears, claws, ripped up clothes, and of course blood. So I walk in unnoticed, don't check in at the clubhouse because I'm not even a Boy Scout, find a nice bridge in the woods that goes over a small dried up creek, and I take up residence there. A few scouts come by and try to claim that spot, but see I'm already there and keep walking, occasionally asking, "Who is that?" So the trail starts. I get some really good scares. I was super into it. Jumping out of trees, running around on all fours, climbing out from under the bridge. So the haunt comes to an end. My friend comes and finds me from his post and says he's going to skip the meeting. Let's just walk home. Well, apparently during the meeting, we skipped the scout leaders started asking who the werewolf on the bridge was. But since I was never supposed to be there, and my friend never exactly mentioned me, this freaked a group of Boy Scouts out, some believing an actual werewolf haunts those woods. That's been like 20 years ago, and I think some people still believe it. Nice. One year I was a scarer at a haunted house. I was put in the lobby where the rules and the pacing is set for the house. I was Henrietta Pumpernickel, and I created a false sense of security, telling jokes, singing a terrible rip of a song, Happy, by replacing happy with humpy, as I had huge, giant microbe hump and hobbed around. My only good scare was when I spooked someone around a corner, lol. Not a scare, but my best reaction was in 2016. Me and my friends went up to one of the haunted house places, 7 of us in total. We were walking through, and this girl in an exorcist-style pose springs out from behind a doorway. In pure panic and fear, I screamed out, "Hi, how are you?" And she just effing stops and stares at me as we walk past as if to say, "Tough F." I sometimes like to throw strange voices out in the dark to see what people react to. One time I pretended to be a scary clown that sounded like Elmo. Well, this guy starts freaking out and moves to the other side of the trail away from me. Turns out another roamer who was dressed as a clown can also make a perfect Elmo voice, and he was inches away from this biker dude. He literally jumped in the air while his legs were running in midair like a cartoon and landed and took off out of the woods to his car and drove off. Buckle up, because this is a bit of a long one. Back in, I think, 2006 or 2007, I was working at a haunted house playing Freddy Krueger in one of the first rooms in the haunt. We had radios in all the rooms we would use to call out when we had a guest that screamed more than normal. Now, I had the room set up so that the Elm Street sign was maybe 3 feet away from the door, and an old boiler I could hide behind and pop out of, combined with an actual metal but dulled prop glove. This lady and her kids walk in, and I popped out, but I hit the glove on the boiler at just the right angle, so some sparks popped from the metal-on-metal contact. The lady freaked out, fainted, and hit her head on the pole holding the street sign. The lights in the building had to be cut on. Ambulance called, the whole 9 yards. She was bleeding but wasn't seriously hurt and somehow didn't sue the ever-loving F out of us. They did take away my metal glove and replaced it with a plastic one that broke within 10 minutes of doing my bit though. Absolute funniest thing that ever happened to me while I was there. My family don't celebrate Christmas like they do for Halloween, and I'm their prime scarer. Last year, a group of teen girls looking in on me doing my act and walking while doing a bridge, the upside down thing on all fours, and ran out of the room and didn't stop until they were off the property. They didn't even make it past the door. I broke my finger trying to get up, but it was worth their reaction. I worked in a haunt that was an old prison. I was dressed as a clown and I was hidden in the last jail cell next to the back door. I quickly learned that as a clown, all I needed to do to get a great reaction was show myself. I stepped out in front of these 2 middle-aged black women One of them screamed and leapt backwards off her feet and slammed onto the ground so hard her wig flew off. I didn't even have time to wonder if I should break character because she grabbed her wig and ran out the door in the blink of an eye with her friend chasing after her. I volunteered as a zombie in a haunt one year. The haunt only lasts for a weekend each year, so there were a lot of people coming through at the height of it. They were escorted through by guides in security costumes. The guides carried guns that had red laser lights on the end, which was great because we could watch for the lights and know exactly where each group was. My best reaction was a very tough-looking woman who actually ended up in the fetal position crying and finally screaming that she just peed herself, so please leave her alone. My friend was dressed in ragged prom gown and actually scared a guy so bad she made him puke. That was the highlight that year. The rest of us were wondering why all of a sudden there were no guests coming through. Then we heard "clean up in aisle 7" announced over the audio system, followed by "we have a puker." We all figured that was the closest thing possible to a Zombie Academy Award nomination. Had a great time doing it that year. The only downside was there were multiple fog machines throughout, and even though we used the organic fog juice, I still needed lots of bottles of Gatorade and water to keep from hacking up a lung. It's been 20 years, but I'll never forget working in the haunted house at this major amusement park. I was wearing a full-body fuzzy monster suit. I sat on some stairs right as you entered. One bro comes in, says, "There's a guy in that suit," and pushed me, so I fell over. Oh, guess not. As he turns to walk away, I slowly reached out and tapped his shoulder. He turned around expecting to see one of his friends and found the monster's face right up in his own. He literally shit his pants, turned and shuffled out of the entrance. I could hear his friends laughing the rest of the time they were in the attraction. I worked at a local haunted house every Halloween a few years ago. The last bit of the house was outside, and it was always pitch black. I would dress in a black suit that had eyes that would glow intermittently and hide outside the barrier. To scare people, I would slip under the barrier into the path and shriek with my eyes glowing, so it would look like I was there all along. One time, I did this to a couple of girls going through, and one of them screamed bloody murder and ran away. I noticed something on the floor after they left and picked it up. It was her tampon. Ugh. Not a scarer, but as a scared. I teamed up with a scare to get revenge on a friend. My group of friends went to a large fair my city puts on every Easter, and we usually went on all the rides together. However, once we reached the haunted house, we all became reluctant to go in, except Barry. He went around the group begging us to go in and that it was a good value, even though entry was a pretty steep $10. Eventually, we gave in and entered. I hate jump scares, and the rest of the group knew that. Surprisingly, horror movie fan Barry got scared upon entry to the house and made a beeline to the back, used me as a human shield, and pushed me to the front of the group. I hated the experience, and it seemed that whoever ran the house could tell as I began peeking around the corners to prevent any more jump scares. Lo and behold, I looked around another corner into a small, cupboard-sized nook and saw him, a scare in a jigsaw mask. He knew what I was doing and immediately put a finger to his lips, and after a pause, I moved past the nook he was hiding in as if nobody was there. A moment later, Barry's hand left my hips, he screamed, and he cursed me out on it. I replied by telling him that he's leading the group for the rest of the tour.